The UK, Canada, and Australia have announced that they will recognize a Palestinian state, a decision that's at odds with President Trump and Israeli President Netanyahu. Joining us now, Senator Chris Coons. It says here you're a Democrat. Now, how do they? I would have never. He's from Delaware, friend of the show, member of the Foreign Relations Committee. And first thing you said was you will willingly get up this early because it's, what, did you say the best show?
I love coming on this early because I get the best comments from my friends after doing an interview with you guys.
You do. Sort of, I guess, both side-isms, because you will get it. They decided, the producers, that we would start with that. We could have started with the UN. We could have started with
the economy.
The economy. Well, probably
President's speech.
President's speech. Could have started with all
cancel
those.
Culture comes to late night.
Yeah, cancel culture comes to the other party, to the other side. Amazing. What do we do with Gaza? What do we do with the Palestinian problem? Are we on the wrong side of that?
First, it's important to always remember that Hamas on October 7th assaulted, invaded, attacked Israel, and murdered thousands of innocent civilians. And the tragic war that's now gone on, in my view, too long, is a direct result of that. Israel, I think, should declare victory, having struck decisive blows against Hamas, against Hezbollah, against Iran, and find a way to hand over, with our partnership and support, the security and stabilization of Gaza to Arab, regional soldiers and governments, and flood humanitarian aid into Gaza. I recognize that Hamas is willing to fight to the last Palestinian civilian, and that not all of this is of Israel's making, but Israel's global standing is desperately at risk because of the suffering of Palestinian civilians. I think they should be allowing humanitarian aid to flood into Gaza, yet I understand the legitimacy of Israelis being profoundly concerned about their security.
During the President's state visit to the UK, and I'm sure you were glued to the TV set watching that, swelling with pride that only the second one, okay. But someone asked Keir Starmer, are you going to recognize the Palestinian state? And he, as many politicians do, not you ever, but as many politicians do, he said, I will guarantee you that Hamas will be no part of the government, of the future government. And President Trump kind of patted him on the hand like he had said, I guess he was trying to say, cover both sides. He did not say that they weren't going to, that was in the works, that they were going to recognize the state.
Right.
So it's not a surprise that they did it. That gets to the next question we can lead into whether Benjamin Netanyahu should be arrested if he shows his face in New York City, according to the mayoral candidate Mamdani. You've seen that, right?
I have not seen that. What are you referencing?
You've not seen that?
He said it twice.
What?
Mamdani says if he wins and becomes the mayor of New York City,
no, I had missed that.
He's going to instruct
when he's here for the UN.
Right.
If Bibi Netanyahu were to come to New York, to have him arrested under the idea that he is a war criminal by a justice system, by the way, that the United States, I don't believe, supports or even recognizes.
Yeah, the Rome Treaty. Look, the treaty that set up the UN does not allow that. Frankly, I wasn't aware of the foreign policy of Mamdani. I do support the fact that the governor...
Just to be clear, he said it before, he said it once, at least once publicly, prior to becoming, prior to the nomination, effectively, winning the primary, and then doubled down on it about a week and a half ago.
Well, Mamdani has said quite a few things. I'm not a New Yorker. I'm not a specialist in New York politics. I will say that his focus on costs, on the costs of living, the cost of housing, is what attracted a lot of support here in New York across a wide range of neighborhoods. But I don't endorse a wide range of the things that he has previously supported. Him? I have not endorsed him. I also have never been asked to endorse him.
I'm asking, would you endorse him?
I'm not endorsing in the New York mayoral race, no.
What do you think, though, more broadly, to the degree that he is representative, or if you think he is, of a broader move amidst the Democratic Party, more towards a, he's part of this socialist, National Socialist Party?
National Socialist Party?
I mean, he calls
that's exactly not the direction we're talking about. You don't mean Nazis.
Excuse me? He talks himself.
You mean Democratic Socialist?
Democratic Socialist.
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Sorry, I apologize.
Significant difference, but it's okay.
Well, that's the next step after you get to Democratic. You got to end up there.
Look, the larger point is we have two really compelling candidates running for governor in Virginia and in New Jersey, who I think represent the direction the Democratic Party should be taking. A primary in New York City is not representative of the broad run of the United States. But President Trump ran on reducing prices. Mamdani is running on reducing prices. And what I think most Americans responded to in the last election and in this upcoming election is the rent is too damn high.
Sure, but
and Trump is not delivering on that promise to the American people
let me
with this
ask you about
chaotic
that.
tariff agenda that is raising prices for working people.
But let me ask you a question. Part of the, look, people are focused on affordability, which is the issue. I agree with that. The question is, how do you solve the affordability
We
issue?
can set price controls. We can set price control on everything.
His view, meaning potentially the next mayor of New York, is to freeze housing prices, rent in New York, at the same time that he says he wants to create affordable housing.
Right. When I was county executive responsible...
That's a very hard thing to do. If you freeze rent, the developers say to themselves, well, I can't invest here. This makes no sense.
Right.
So the question is,
I believe more in building housing rather than freezing the benefits, the rent that you can earn from building and developing housing. When I was county executive for half the population of Delaware, I put a lot of time and effort into affordability in housing, helped pass one of the first inclusionary zoning codes, helped pass codes that gave builders incentives in terms of density if they would commit to long-term affordability. I think market forces partnering with government investment and changes in zoning can produce more affordable housing. Now, New York is a uniquely difficult housing environment, but in my county, which is in the suburbs of Philadelphia, northern Delaware, we had housing prices skyrocketing, and the folks who worked for the county, the police and the librarians and the public safety aides, the guys who help run the sewer system, were getting priced out of our county, and we're driving an hour to get to where they were.
A big part
we need
of
to address
it
this
costs
nationally.
more to build at this point. If you have lumber prices, if you have the cost of everything that goes into it, if you have labor
Wallboard
prices,
from Mexico, plywood from Canada. You put tariffs on them, the prices of housing go up.
The prices had gone up before that. After COVID, they are continuing to climb with some of these things. What would you do?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
Inflation started climbing before. It was a huge issue post-COVID because of the supply chain issues that shut down. What would you do?
So I think the economic circumstances following COVID were hopefully unique, and we've now got inflation persistently back down, but supply chain problems are significant problems. I would not slap tariffs on the critical inputs for the production of housing, and I would work with state and local governments to reduce some of the costs to housing that come from zoning and come from the difficulty of getting site reviews, site approvals, license and inspection. When you work at the local level, that's the stuff, that's the blocking and tackling. Connecting with your state and local transportation department, connecting with the sewer and water authorities, making sure there's enough power. That's the sort of work that actually delivers housing.
Well, you're lucky you're in, you're not in New York, I guess. So the minority leader and I guess both of them, right?
They're both minority leaders. Yes.
Both of
Republicans run the House and the Senate, Joe.
Both of them, but they're both from New York.
Yep.
They can legitimately be asked that question.
Sure.
What would you do? What are they going to do in your view?
I don't
Schumer
know what
and
they will
Jeffrey.
ultimately do.
What would they say? I think they were asked recently, and they were humana.
I think what I heard Leader Schumer say yesterday was that he's going to continue talking with Mamdani. I don't know what that conversation needs to be. But I know the most important conversation, in my view, for the country needs to be with Schumer and Jeffries and President Trump about how do we avoid a government shutdown? Yeah. How do we reach a bipartisan solution that keeps the government open? That's what happened the last 4 years. We haven't had a shutdown since the last Trump administration. That shutdown was 35 days. It's not good or constructive. I'm the senior Democrat on defense appropriations.
Think there's any way it doesn't...
You can be guaranteed that the PRC won't have a government shutdown.
But when the Republicans last time, they said, talk to us. We're not going to do this without, we have all these concerns, the Hawks, the Freedom Caucus, wanted to talk about spending.
Right.
And the Democrats at that point were, we need a clean bill, we need a clean CR, we need it. Now the shoe's on the, it's just, that's why people out in the country just go, it just doesn't depend on who's, it's the same old, depending on who's in the position of bargaining. I mean, you can't come and say you gotta.
The position, the president and his party control the House and the Senate. If we have a shutdown, it's their shutdown. I'm an appropriator. I'd like to see a path forward. We passed out of the Senate Appropriations Committee a health and education bill and a defense bill that address a lot of the problems caused over the last 6 months. The huge cuts to NIH and CDC and HIV research and work. You had someone on earlier who used to run one of our major premier health organizations. Huge cuts to childhood cancer research were in the president's budget. Huge restructurings that would really harm our ability.
If the Democrats don't get their way on that, then the government, it's not
that should move forward.
If it gets shut down because the Democrats, if they say no to those things.
It's not just Democrats, Joe. That came out of committee 26
I know, but if you don't get your way on this, if
it.
Democrats don't get their way on this, they will shut down the government.
If what's been happening, which is the president and his cabinet keep taking big bites out of different parts of our government, keep canceling and cutting and shutting down things like the NIH.
So you
and
don't
CDC.
like what they're doing, but you're shutting down the government because you don't like what they're doing.
Healthcare from millions of Americans.
But Democrats are shutting it. Democrats are shutting it down.
It's leverage that the minority party can use, and you think
It may be the only leverage we have
But
to help
it won't be
reduce
used
the
on the
harm
other
to the
side.
American people from these healthcare cuts.
But you think the other side should have that same power to do that, to shut things down when they have the minority power.
That's how it's worked out over the last decade.
Senator, I have a totally different question, which is, I imagine that you look at the Jimmy Kimmel situation and the FCC and think to yourself, I'm going to put words in your mouth, I imagine you think this is a free speech issue, that you think the FCC is going too far. I'm imagining that. My question is slightly different. My question is, you look at the folks and the kind of comedy that you see at night on the major networks, and I think we could fairly both say that for the most part, it leans left. It does. Do you think, either from a fairness doctrine or anything else, in terms of the way the FCC thinks about over-the-air broadcasts, that it should be more balanced than it is? I'm just curious because I think you can hold a lot of different ideas in your head at the same time.
As I think you said in a previous segment, I think the market should be deciding that. If there isn't the viewership to drive folks tuning in late and watching those shows, they'll put new content, new people, new comedians on. It shouldn't be the FCC commissioner saying we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Look, even my colleague Ted Cruz has said this is incredibly dangerous. Cancel culture, may have gone too far on campuses, but it shouldn't be federal policy. And when the president of the United States directs his attorney general to start going after his political enemies using the Department of Justice, and the FCC chair and other leaders within the administration start going after, investigating, prosecuting, or threatening to pull the licenses of major businesses, we're moving in a very bad and dangerous direction.
I think Trump thinks that there were laws broken. And if there's nothing happening in terms of prosecution, he's like, why isn't something happening in terms of the prosecution? He doesn't just, it's not just political enemies and he wants, but I'm reading something that Kimmel said at the time of Roseanne's cancellation. And he said, thank God ABC, to their credit, didn't waste any time. They canceled her show today. I'm not a fan of censorship, but this wasn't about free speech. It was about the consequences for saying something vile. You can say what you want, but networks don't have to pay you to say it. So, and
look, where we are this week in the shadow of Charlie Kirk's funeral is asking ourselves, I hope, questions. Are we willing to tolerate, celebrate, allow folks who say things we disagree with, or are we encouraging or supporting violence against them? I was moved by what Charlie Kirk's widow had to say about being willing even to forgive his assassin and his pastor taking it as a moment to speak to faith, his widow speaking to young men in our country saying, live a life that is more healthy, balanced, and sustainable. There were others sadly, one of them our president, who used that moment to say, I hate my enemies and I want to go after them. We need national leaders, and I thought Governor Cox has been a very admirable leader in doing this, who say there is a real line between speech and violence.
We'll leave it there, I guess. Senator, thank you. I hope you get a lot of comments today from both sides of the aisle, probably. That's what we strive for, I think.
Coming up.